Hi, everybody. Welcome to One Soccer Happy Hour. I'm your host, Andi. Pleased to always be joined by Laura Armstrong of the Toronto Star, former national team member of your Canada Soccer, Carmelina Moscato. And today we have two very special guests. That's right, double the trouble. So Stephanie Labbe, goalkeeper for Team Canada, and Georgia Simmerling, three-time Olympian, also represents the Maple Leaf. First Canadian to represent Canada in 3 different sports at the Olympics. So Georgia, thanks for making the rest of us look bad. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you guys taking the time. So we have our drinks, correct? It is happy hour.
Yep.
We got it.
I missed the member.
Do we have, what is in that coffee mug?
Tea.
Oh, okay. Again, making us look bad. It's starting already. Is that because, wait a second. Is that because, is that just a preference, or are you in training mode still?
Whoa, we're jumping into the questions here. I did just get off my bike training, but this one actually joined me. And I actually had to, it's pretty crazy. I think like the world that we're living in now, I've actually started like virtual bike racing, which sounds crazy. But there's a company called Zwift, and essentially you just set up your bike and a trainer, and you need a little Bluetooth accessibility there, and then you're good to go. And I had to like host a women's ride today, so there were about like 200 people on the ride, and this point it was pretty adorable. And so yeah, we just got off our bikes.
Okay.
I earned this beer though.
She did.
I was gonna say, you know what? I just did that myself this morning. What a weird coincidence. That was, you know what? That's crazy. Well done, Georgia.
Funny, I didn't see you on Zwift, Carm.
Yeah, it's different race, I think.
Yeah. You know what? Why don't we dive into? Let's just address the elephant in the room, right? Which is obvious that the two of you on your way to Tokyo, right? These are going to be your 4th Olympics, Georgia, your 2nd Olympics, Steph. Steph, you can start first. Just your thoughts when everything was really coming to a head, from the IOC saying, we'll let you know by mid-April, to Team Canada saying, no way, we're drawing our line in the sand. If it happens this year, we won't be there, to then the IOC saying, yeah, it's officially postponed. I can't even imagine the roller coaster of emotions going on.
Yeah, it really was that. I mean, I got back from France with the national team at the beginning of March. And I think from the day I got home, I was planning to be home for 4 days and then head down to North Carolina for preseason. And yeah, it felt like every day I woke up, there was a new set of news and a new set of updates. And it really was like, I guess, a lot of emotions that came up. And I think the first emotion was definitely like shock, and just like started a lot of anxiety thinking about like, what is it going to be? Is it going to be canceled? If it is there and we don't go, like, how is that going to feel? Yeah. And I think especially when the COC put out their statement, that if it was going to happen, I think like my first thought was kind of like, obviously the ego side of it, where it was like, you took my dream away, and like thinking like, this is what I've been working hard and now I don't get to go, and kind of that side. But then quickly I like shifted that mindset to like being such a proud Canadian and being proud that we were the ones taking a stance and really like putting not only our own health and our country's health, but like the global health above everything. And then I think the whole shift towards like, okay, what does this actually mean? And how is this going to affect? So I think there was like a lot of back and forth between like, this is actually affecting me so much, to this is for the greater good, to back to like, but it still affects me, this is for the greater good. And it was a lot of kind of shifting back and forth. And I think the biggest thing is just like knowing that this is so much bigger than sport and so much bigger than our individual like careers.
Mm-hmm. That is incredibly good, Steph. I mean, the perspective, I'm not surprised, knowing you and knowing Georgia. I know you guys are just controlling the controllables right now, back to the race this morning and the bread that you bake and everything else. So I totally understand your perspective. It's really refreshing to hear, actually, and really cool. Thanks for that.
I like how you slid in the bread that you bake. what is, you're so great. You're a role model, Olympian, and that bread that you bake, I swear, that's some of the best stuff.
Andi, maybe we're not Instagram friends. I think you're just putting this out there for So funny enough though, I mean, similar to what Steph said, and Carm, it's controlling the controllables. And, we're in our house for, 98% of the day. And so I think I've just been going through what makes us happy. And obviously it's a very different circumstance for both of us, for of course, most of us around the world. And I actually have found a new love for, making sourdough bread. So I have 3 older brothers. So if Steph doesn't crush the bread, my brothers, I just drop loaves off at their doorstep, and they are most happy to have warm bread. So it's been pretty fun.
Yes. I'd love some bread too. Laura, you have a question?
I think it's like so interesting the way that you guys are able to find that perspective, but I also think that like it's important to allow yourself to have that moment of just like sheer disappointment. And I think that we're all sort of riding this roller coaster of 1 minute's great and the next minute you're yelling at your printer. I mean, I know some people have been doing that today. And so it's definitely like, what has it been like for you guys to like allow yourself to feel that disappointment?
Yeah, I think and similar to what Steph said, I've struggled to, I think you think about your life and your career and how this has affected you. I've of course catch myself going through those moments. And then I think I'm like, oh, you're actually being very selfish right now, because this is far greater than you and your sport and your country and, Olympic sport as a whole. So I similar to what you're saying, I've bounced back from thinking, how has this affected me? And like, darn this. And like, my coach hasn't given me a program. And I don't know what I'm doing in September. And then I catch myself just saying like, kind of holding the reins up and being like, that's okay. Like this, you need to just slow down, because it isn't about you. But then it's like, it's okay to go through those emotions. So it definitely has been a bit of a roller coaster. I think honestly, having each other's support and going through very similar emotions together has been a really, really helpful thing for both of us. So I think it's been great to have each other's support.
Yeah, and I think piggybacking on that, I think there's something about like taking the time to really accept and like acknowledge those like selfish feelings and kind of being okay with it for a certain amount of time, like allowing yourself to feel that. Because I think the more that we push those emotions aside and don't allow ourselves to feel that, is just going to like snowball and build up before it kind of comes crashing. So I think it's like allowing yourself, like Georgia was saying, like it's okay to feel those things. It's okay. Like we're athletes. We are selfish at times. Like we make decisions on what's going to be best for our career. So it's okay to like feel those emotions and be upset and be angry and be sad and be anxious and have all of those different emotions. And like, it's okay as long as you keep reminding yourself that this is bigger than us.
Well, and speaking of emotions, I want to get to that in just a moment, Steph, because obviously it was an incredible emotion to qualify for the Olympics, you getting the Golden Glove as well in that tournament. But Georgia, I want to go back to you as well, because right now it seems like back-to-back Olympics. So you are a multi-sport athlete. You won a bronze in team pursuit in cycling at the 2016 Rio Games, but you also compete in winter sports. So before Pyeongchang, here you are competing in ski cross. You're a medal hopeful as well. You're strong on the circuit, and it's a couple weeks out, and there's that final race, and you go down and you break both legs. Maybe describe, the feeling around that, and then of course with this being postponed. I can't even imagine what you're thinking.
Yeah, of course, that was a very extremely challenging day. I think not only what I went through physically, on top of having my sponsors, my family, my friends, it was the one stop on the tour in Canada. So, Canada was there in full force. So I think, it was of course a very hard day. Cycling to me, without going into the detail of the rehab, was like the light at the end of the tunnel. Truly, I can't imagine going through the rehab that I went through without having something to believe in, and really wholeheartedly believing that I was going to come back. I think I'm like getting goosebumps talking about it. I think having, like, when you are going through something that challenging, I mean, Steph we were together for some of my rehab, but not like mostly, for sure we were apart. And there were like many FaceTimes that I would just like pick up my phone and just start crying, like not even a word. But I think that like the cool thing about that was having the support from Steph and my family, of course, but I would always bounce. So there were low times, of course, but I would always bounce out of those pretty quickly. I remember, like, you know, within maybe 5 minutes, I'd be laughing. Like Steph would just be making me laugh, just crying. And so I think, yeah, like I had the support from so many people. B210 was one of my major supporters with my rehab. I had like the best facility and care that I could think of, and really committed. Of course, I committed to my rehab, and I think at the end of the day, I fully believed that I was going to come back from that injury. I mean, not only did I break both my legs, but I tore every ligament in my knee. I kind of say I'd like to, like, if I had 4 legs to break, I would have honestly rather break 4 legs than did what I did to my knee, because I mean, tearing one ligament is one out of however many I tore. Like, name a ligament, I tore it. The knee is like not mine, essentially. I think it's like Jack's, let's say. And then, yeah, kind of switching towards Tokyo. It's kind of it's an interesting question, because I really don't compare the two. They were and they are very different roads, I think, that I've taken. Like the one commonality, I think, is that cycling truly was that light at the end of the tunnel for me, and it still is. Steph and I remember, I think it was a couple days before the announcement of the postponement of the Olympics, we were just sitting on our couch, and I was like, and it was when I think we were training really hard. Like when Steph got back from Europe, you know, it was a couple weeks, and we were very committed. Like we were at home, but like training super hard. And then the announcement happened. But a couple days before, I'm like, Steph, if it was delayed, like, would you still go? Because we had plans of retiring after. And she's like, yeah, I totally would. She's like, would you? And I'm like, yeah, without question. Yeah. So I think like rebuilding my body to literally learning how to walk again, there's no possible chance I wouldn't do another year and continue towards Tokyo.
Did you just retire?
21.
Okay, what
I was
happened?
just gonna ask.
It's out.
Sorry, is there a double announcement retirement? You heard it here first.
Oh my
You heard it here first, folks. Like, what's going on? Oh my God, Steph, I did have a question for you. Were you at the event where this incident happened?
Yes, I was. Mm-hmm.
And so, tell us about what you experienced on the other end of that day in that process.
Yeah, I was like at the finish line, kind of in the like area in the corral in the VIP with like all of my family, all of Georgia's family, watching. And it was an interesting, because at first it was like where she got injured, it was like on the last, there was like a big jump, and then it kind of went into this gully, and it was like the one blind spot of the entire course. So it's like she went into that, and then the other 3 or 2 of them came out, and then she just like never reappeared. So it's kind of like, oh, she must have like fell. Then you kind of just, yeah, and then you just kind of like wait for her to get up and like ski down the side, and she just never got up. And then obviously like fast forward, all the emergency vehicles go and whatnot. And then I remember like going into the emergency, like the tent where they were
the ski patrol.
Yeah, dealing with her injury there. And I remember like, firstly, just like looking at her and being like, holy F, like this is so emotional, because obviously she's like screaming and they're like putting IVs in her and whatnot. And I think so it was the first one, like being the girlfriend and just like feeling that pain. But then like I quickly shifted into like the athlete mindset, and I was like, holy crap, like the Olympics is in 3 weeks. This better not be serious. And I think the more I was in there, the more I was realizing like this is really serious. And I felt the Olympic dream like being crushed kind of thing. Like I was feeling those emotions as the athlete. And then, but like honestly, like her parents were in there, and like her mom was being so strong and was like, and I think like I kind of was getting strength from like her parents too, because I was like feeling the emotion of being the athlete. And I think it was like a weird range of emotions, but I remember it was just like, yeah, heartbreaking, because I saw it from so many different angles and really felt it from so many different angles.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's. I mean, listen, we were actually airing that on CBC Sports. I remember watching that and speechless. Right? It's so speechless. But it's. I mean, you look fitter than ever. Obviously, this would have been great. And hold on one more year, right? Like you got to hold on. We're getting there. And Steph, I just wanted to quickly go back to just the elation of once again qualifying for the Olympics. So Rio 2016, the first one where you are the #1 goalkeeper, you capture bronze. And I mentioned at that qualifying tournament as well, you were the star goalkeeper too. What was that tournament like? And then punching the ticket to Tokyo.
Yeah, it was quite exciting. You know, every tournament, it's like different. You have a different group of girls, different challenges, different teams playing against. So it's always exciting no matter what. And I think always going into it, you know, that semifinal game is going to be like, it does not matter who you play. It's going to be a like stressful game, high anxiety. It's going to be a close game no matter what. And it really was. But yeah, just the feeling, of course, to qualify for my second games and to be a part of that group was so exciting. And we definitely have some work to do. And I think it's the silver lining, and something, you know, I'm really trying to see the positive is we have another year to really keep pushing our team to a new level and close the gap between us and obviously the Americans as the biggest one that, you know, we need to beat if we want to win that gold. And I think I think super exciting, super awesome to be a part of it. And I just can't wait to keep, you know, growing and developing and hopefully help lead this team.
Mm-hmm. Laura, you have that question on developing as well, the women's game?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of developing the women's game and in terms of the differences that you see from the Canadians and the Americans, like where do you want that to grow? Where do you want to see your Canadian team grow?
Yeah, I think it's just continuing, obviously, like in terms of our chemistry, that's something that we have that's really, really strong. But I think continuing to build on our understanding of the game and tactical excellence and understanding, because I think it's like you can set out a game plan, but it's about adapting and reacting to like what is actually happening on the field. You know, you can do the X's and O's off the field all you want and you know, predict or anticipate how a team is going to play against you, but it's about being on the field and having the understanding and the knowledge of the game to be able to read what the game is actually giving you and what players are giving you. And I think that the more that we can continue to develop that, the more we'll be able to make in-game changes and react to things that are happening in the game quicker.
Mm-hmm. When you think I just want to follow up on that real quick. When you think back to that final game against the Americans, like Andi and Carm and I watched it in studio, and it was great that you guys managed to keep it 0-0 until about the 60th minute, if I remember correctly, and it was the longest anybody had kept the Americans off the score sheet. Is that last 30 minutes, is that what you're talking about, sort of figuring out the game plan? When the other team adjusts, you have to be able to adjust back?
For sure. And I think there's something about like, when you play the Americans, you are pushed to your like physical limits, your tactical limits, your like all the limits that you can be, your technical limits, like you're playing right at that capacity.
Right.
And I think we did that. And there's a level of bravery and courage that this team has been bringing against these top teams. You know, we're so confident and brave to be able to play out against these top teams. And, you know, we have players that are living on the ball. We're not giving the ball away as easily, but when you're playing to those limits, at some point,
Is the dog back?
Got a package. When you're playing to those like limits, at some point, the decision making and the cognitive like ability is going to drop, because when you're
what's living on the ball?
Like,
nice. I like that, Georgia, for the people watching.
When you have the ball at your feet, you're not just like passing it away all the time. Like you want to stay on it. So if someone comes, you like try to play around them, or you dribble out of pressure.
Got it.
Yeah.
Living.
Yeah. So I think when you're at those like physical and technical limits, that's when like, it's like when you're so tired, it's harder to make educated decisions. So I think the longer that you're at that limit, for us, you know, we got to the 60th minute and then we start making errors, and it's mostly around decision making. It's not like, of course it's technical execution, but it's based on those decision-making things that aren't as smart once you get a little bit more fatigued. So I think it's pushing the physical limits of how much we can entail with that and continuing to make good decisions once we get tired.
And Steph, it's true to say, I think that even for Georgia, for top level athletes, your whole career is about that bandwidth and like pushing that threshold further and further and further until, stress can break you, and stress can come in totally different ways. And when you talk about, decisions on the ball, that's how it shows up in soccer is we'll give the ball away or rush a pass or, floppy play. When you start to see that, there's something happening with that player or unit or group of players that, they're sort of getting to get back into adapt to a game. It could be an athlete's life's work to get to that level and that high threshold. And really you can master, to your point, tactics, but it's mastering the mind first and foremost. And you two are great examples of that. I mean, I feel like you've healed yourself, Georgia. I don't know, with your mind.
Well, that's why I got set on Zwift, because it's challenging her mental, and her endurance. But you actually said, we did a race last night, and she's like, "Whoa, that was ridiculously hard. I would never have done that if I didn't sign up for this race." We were on we had a Zoom chat with a couple other retired skiers and current skiers. Steph was chatting with the boys, and she's like, "It was so fun." Anyway, but it's true, expanding your bandwidth and your repertoire, right?
Yeah, and it just adds to mental resilience.
Totally.
I spent 51 minutes in the red zone on that race last night.
Whoa.
It's unheard of. And I was saying, if I were to just get on the bike and ride, I would never push myself to be in my red zone for 51 minutes. But because I just had this race and I was just pushing, and the amount of times that I wanted to stop, but I was like, no, you have to finish.
You might be in the wrong position in soccer to live for 51 minutes in the red zone. That's tremendous. By the way, close to that.
It's all relative. Oh my God.
You guys.
Amazon, take it easy.
Literally, a bike just got delivered.
Is this one of those
we don't have enough
for your class?
Yeah, we don't have enough of those in the house. Is that for real?
Oh my God.
That is hysterical.
Life of a right?
Should be enough. Should be.
So I do have to ask this, because Steph and I, we are Instagram buddies. Georgia, I'm signing up and following you right after this. But I did see that you put Steph on the rollers, which, first of all, I need to know, did you actually put holes in that wall? Did you lose your balance? And secondly, are you teaching Georgia any kind of juggling or goalkeeping skills? Are you guys at least kind of teaching each other's crafts?
Well, first off, there's definitely no holes in the wall. Maybe there's a few marks on the walls. Second of all, I'm probably the worst professional soccer player because I actually don't own a soccer ball.
But tell us about the juggling and stuff that we've been doing.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, so we've been doing a lot of hand-eye coordination stuff with tennis balls and juggling and stuff like that. Yeah, I actually don't own a soccer ball. How bad is that? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's busy.
She's busy.
She's just throwing tennis balls at you then?
Oh gosh.
Oh yeah. See, we've been trying this one.
Don't look at it. Don't look at the screen.
Go on.
Oh wait. Oh, see?
Oh.
That was a fluke.
Go again.
Oh,
this is a fluke. You're looking at the screen.
No. Oh, that's a good little example of what we've been trying.
We're doing that kind of thing.
I like it.
Have you guys mastered the koala challenge yet?
We have.
Yes.
Whoa, that's impressive.
It's pretty challenging because we're the same. We're kind of both long and lanky.
Oh, well,
we're similar height, similar weight.
We're not, you're tall and I'm short and bigger, but in terms of we're similar weight. So we practiced Steph being the base, and I was like, you are not a sturdy base. And so I was then the base, and I'm a lower body, that's my strength as an athlete. So I was like a very sturdy base, and
Am I not
Steph,
lower body?
well, you're just more like your reaction. You know, come on, you don't have quads like gorilla quads. So, so Steph, we had to practice like many times and watch a few YouTube videos, but every video we saw, there was like a large man as the base and like a very little woman just like going around him. And we mastered it though. We did. It honestly was like a great like teamwork, perseverance, overcoming. Like I did not think we would do it at first, and we were determined.
Yeah, we took breaks. We studied film.
Yeah,
we made sure we had
inspired. I'm inspired for sure. I'm gonna give it a go with Mickey a little later. Definitely.
Poor little doggy. That is too. But yeah, I tried the koala challenge and I failed miserably. I've learned I have absolutely no upper body strength whatsoever. But let's turn the page. Something a little bit serious. And again, you know, we've talked about the two of you being really good role models, especially for young athletes and for young women as well, who want to, I mean, again, Georgia, determination, not even just coming back from injury, but a multi-sport athlete. And Steph, I'm going to go back a couple years ago where you made it. Like you made a PDL team, Calgary Foothills. This is when they were still there. Obviously now they're in the Canadian Premier League, and whatever rules and regulations, right? Like you can't play because you're a woman. I just wonder what that experience was like for you, and even kind of getting the story out there that women can compete with men. And I'm wondering if you also see the goalkeeper position as being unique in that sense, right? Because even in hockey, you look at Shannon Zabados and Manon Rhéaume being able to play in hockey. And I know Zabados had a really successful career playing in the men's pro league. Does the goalkeeper position lend itself perhaps as well to that?
Yeah, I think there definitely is a unique aspect to it, being that you're not as much in like physical challenges and duels, especially in soccer. Like as a female, you're not expected to be able to run as much, run as fast as the men, change the direction the same. When we go back to the physical capacity, obviously men have a genetic advantage and a biological advantage in terms of physical capacity. And I think as a goalkeeper, you are put in one-on-one situations less. So I think you can hide the physical side of it with a higher like tactical IQ and technical ability. So I think with that being two of my strengths, being my tactical IQ and my technical ability, I'm able to kind of overcome maybe the physical disadvantages that I have just because I'm a woman. But that experience was very, very interesting for me. I mean, I have nothing but positive things to say about Tommy Wheeldon and the entire like Foothills and even now Cavalry like organization. They were so welcoming. Tommy from day one said that he would, you know, judge me based on my ability and not my gender. And every single guy that was on the team welcomed me with open arms, you know, treated me as one of the guys, especially like training with Marco Carducci. I mean, he's such a shining star, and like to be able to train with him day and out, you know, I still train with him in the off seasons here when I'm home. And Tommy's always said, like, every time I'm home, he's like, you always have a team to train with. So they've been amazing and have, you know, opened their arms to me. And I think even them, you know, putting in the fight behind the scenes to try to make it happen and do the best to make it happen. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, their hands were tied. There wasn't much they can do because it was the league above them that made the final call. And yeah, it's a tough one, you know, that I've been trying to fight a bit in the background, but it's, you know, there's only so much you can do with people that are so, you know, stuck in their ways. And I think soccer is a bit behind, unfortunately, in that aspect, because like you said, you know, I had some role models in other sports, and I actually spoke with Haley Wickenheiser a lot too, who I think has made the case for an outfield player. And, you know, in hockey, she was playing over in Finland in the men's league. So she's kind of made that case, I think, where it doesn't always have to be a goalkeeper or a goaltender. But yeah, it was I learned a lot about myself through the process, and I think a lot about society that I guess didn't really experience before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick one around this. We were sort of, you know, chatting about this exact topic before as we're getting ready for this show. And, you know, would it be, I don't even know if this is going to come out right, but would it be something, would you rather play in a men's, first ever woman in a men's league or a men's league, or have a league here in Canada that you could play in? Like, is there this or that, or does that mean more somehow to play amongst men? I don't know if it's coming out properly, but do you see what I mean? Like, is it something you would hope to achieve in your career?
I don't think it's something that I'm like, I want to keep going for. I think if I'm looking at female development and like the legacy of women in Canada, like 100%, I want a league in Canada. And like, if we want to continue to compete and be one of the top teams in the world, it's no question that we need a domestic league. Like, we're the only team for sure in the top 10. I would argue top 15 that in the world that don't have a domestic league. And the gap is going to get bigger between us and the top if we don't start investing in the domestic league, because there's too many players that either go to college and then fall out of the system, or, you know, there's the few that end up getting contracts in Europe to continue to play, but it's a handful, maybe 10 a year that, you know, continue to do that. And if we really want to build the grassroots and give players an opportunity, they need a domestic league to be able to play in.
Well, Georgia, how about, so I know from an Olympic perspective as well, they're starting to add more mixed gender events, team events, right? You're starting to see that, so they can even up the, I wouldn't necessarily say even up the playing field, but make it more even as far as participation. How have you seen that and the growth of that as well, and just more of these mixed gender sports making their way onto the Olympic platform?
I think it's amazing. I think to be honest, apart from the equality piece to it, I think it's also spectator friendly. People love watching it. And I remember as a ski cross athlete, we always talked about like a dual or like a team event in ski cross where like one girl would go down the track and then like hit a buzzer or something, and it would open the gate for a guy to go down the track. I mean, who wouldn't want to watch that? Yeah, I think in cycling, I think it's there's so many. Every Olympics, they switch out events in terms of track cycling. So to be honest, it's hard to keep track of. Excuse the pun. But I think there's definitely an avenue for it. You know, the Olympics are leaning towards more like spectator friendly sports and adrenaline sports. So I mean, what better way is to bring that equality piece in there and have more diversity with mixed gender teams? I think would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. Steph, what did you, when you say like you learned about yourself through that whole process, what did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, like next to the obvious of learning, you know, oh, I'm a woman and I might actually get treated differently because of that. Like, I've never actually experienced that. So that side of it. And I think just like the perseverance that I have and my ability to like push beyond other people's opinions. I think like for sure the resilience that it took to be in that environment every single day, like to be surrounded by men, to like the men's game is so much different in terms of like the way that they communicate, the demands and the accountability that they have on each other. It's like another level. And, you know, the things that are said on the field, I would never repeat off the field. I think the fact that like they said those things to me and held me to the same level and standards, and I was able to not only like accept the words, but like hear it and take away the tone and then be able to like hear the information and adapt and like implement it. I think that it really taught me like, I think how tough of skin that I have, and that I actually like, I can handle that type of communication and that honest, direct communication. And I think that really like took my communication levels to a new level.
I remember you saying that. She would come home and
yeah,
it was just so interesting hearing her. I think I was rehabbing at the time, so I was probably like hyped up on Vicodin.
Helps.
It helps, yeah. So I would just laugh. No, but she would come home and speak about the community and how the guys would just treat her like a bro and call her out on things if she made a bad pass or whatever. But she loved it. Like, you actually were like driving on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that I hear as well from women in the field of play, it's the athletes, the coaches, a lot of times they're very accepting because they just want the best out there. It's the people who sit on the perches, right, who make up the rules and regulations that don't seem to want to budge. But I guess that's the next battle, really, right? But I get where Carm's coming from. It just, maybe it's because the investment hasn't been there for the women's game truly, and elevate it, where there is this desire sometimes to validate ourselves versus the men. But if you have your own prosperous, flourishing league, right? Now, having said that, NWSL, I mean, this is, again, it signed a new big TV contract this year. You know, fingers crossed, obviously things can get going. But you are the reigning champ, right? North Carolina, what was that like? What is it like to hold on to that title a little bit longer, too?
Cheers to that.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep holding on to that. Oh yeah, cheers. Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. That was in my like young career, I'll say. That was my first like national championship, my first time winning a league and my first time winning a championship. So that was like pretty special for me, and pretty like a pretty special moment. And I had Georgia there, which was really awesome. And yeah, I think hopefully, you know, this league gets up and running again this year. I'm being super patient with it right now. Trying not to think about, you know, what date that could be, if it's in weeks or months, but for sure, I'm super excited to get back with that team and get back playing, because that league is so strong, and it every game, every week, it's like challenging and poses a different threat. And, you know, you might play a team one week and win by a few goals, and then you play them again a couple of weeks later and then you lose. And I think just the challenging of like going to different cities and playing teams like Portland in their stadium is so much different than going to like other teams in different stadiums. And there's just so many challenges that it's a really exciting league to be a part of.
All right, so we're gonna have a little bit of fun. I know you were given the heads up on this, right? It's the who's most likely in isolation. So Laura, Carm, do you have your questions in front of you?
They're not silly. It's probably great.
Because what I'll do is I'll start it off.
Okay.
And Laura, how about you go next?
Okay.
Then Carm, then me, then Laura, then Carm, then me, then Laura.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right, so
Bear with me.
So introduce our shoes.
So which one represents
The cycling shoes.
So we got a Louis Garneau. It's like a coarse air light Louis Garneau, Canadian. And then we have
these New Balance
classic
Beauties,
New Balances.
Canadian red.
okay?
There we go.
I like. So for those watching, this is how it works. It's who will most likely, and then I pose the I make the statement, and then they have to hold up the shoe of the person they think is most likely to do this while they're in self-isolation. All right, so I'm kicking it off here.
Is it like focused on self-isolation? Not,
You know what?
Yes.
It can be overall.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
Might change.
they could vary. They could vary.
We'll listen to arguments.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
state your case.
Yeah.
Who is most likely to sleep in?
That's consistent. There you go.
Okay. You're in agreement. Laura,
Okay,
you're up.
I'm next. Who is most likely to eat all the junk food?
Junk food. Oh yeah.
Well, she is drinking tea, so
Yeah.
I mean George is drinking tea, so we
Yeah.
are inclined to believe that. Okay, Carm.
If that's any indication. All right. Who's more likely to leave the dirty dishes in the sink?
Okay.
She cooks, I clean. So
Thank
it's
you.
like,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah.
It's a good rhythm. I like that rhythm, but I like how you also just shove it in her face by leaving the dirty dishes in the sink.
Well, okay. You know what? Next.
They're not always in the sink. Though.
Next. Come on, ladies.
Moving on.
All right.
Next. We're
Who is most likely to spend all day on their phone?
I don't know. It's a tough one.
It's tricky. I mean,
Different days, different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's fair.
But there's not like one person who's more obsessed with a game on their phone than someone else, and you just kind of sit there playing it.
We're not really gamers.
like yesterday, I probably spent 4 hours uploading a video, but it was for my sourdough bread followers. So if you want to make sourdough bread, there was a 9-minute tutorial of how to.
I actually
That
really
took 4 minutes.
so just please send that to me after. Thank you.
It's up there. IGTV.
Great.
Sister.
Great.
Oh, I love it. I love
Oh,
it.
that's me. Sorry.
Yeah.
I can't. Who is more likely to binge watch an entire series? I'm going to say in a day. I'm going to add to this question.
In a day.
Yeah.
We don't really watch series when we're together. We'll watch like maybe one episode a day because we're so busy.
Yeah. Super busy.
Maybe you. Yeah,
But on the road,
probably you.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
You guys are really agreeing.
Georgia needs to work out like 2 times a day to feel like productive, so I have more time.
Yeah. No, you know what, Georgia? I totally understand.
Thank you. I love these side.
Same. I work out like 4 times a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so who's more likely to run out of clean clothes? Guess it's an easy one.
So you don't like doing the laundry, is what you're saying.
That's not true. Not true. So
Multiple times a day.
True.
More laundry.
and with the last like month of bread making, I've recently covered the use of an apron. Who knew? You're very.
I love this whole bread making thing. I cannot wait to get this sourdough. All right.
Seriously.
Well, how about this one? I feel like maybe we can all relate when we're in self-isolation because the days are all meshing together, or maybe that's just me and I totally confessed something I shouldn't. But who's most likely to go the longest without a shower? Ah,
It's because I work out so much that I have to shower.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that is too funny. That is too. I think we have one more, Laura.
Going without a shower is healthier for your hair.
That's true.
It's totally fine.
Exactly.
Come to One Soccer Happy Hour for the hair tips. We got this.
It's
Last one is, who is most likely to go stir crazy?
Yeah, I mean, you're baking bread.
Yeah.
I honestly have found we've just found what works for us. We found our niches and bread baking and honestly like throughout the day we're working out, I'm baking, we're reading, and we're walking our dog and back to cooking or baking, and like our day is filled. And so we're actually meditating a fair bit these days also, and we're just doing I feel like we both used to do like more power yoga, but we've actually kind of leaned towards more like yin yoga. We've like set up our basement a little more like it's a little like sanctuary, and it's pretty peaceful. But so yeah, we're just like figuring out what works for us to not go stir crazy.
Yeah, meditate. You're talking to a tree hugging yogi, so that was right up my alley. Lighting candles, doing incense, chanting things. It's all
It's just.
Sorry, go ahead.
How do you feel before? How do you feel after the meditation? It's just like, it's simple.
Yeah, very, very true. Although I do have Italian blood running through me, so I feel like I'm angry all the time, and I'm just yelling at people. Get off my lawn. Speaking of trying to be Zen, again, just maybe take us through, again, the mental health, right? Being an athlete as well, and the ups and downs of that, and just, what you're comfortable in sharing with us. And maybe are there any kinds of stories where you felt the need to, or someone's reached out to you and you've also had to guide them through some tough times?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like we've leaned on each other, especially in the past couple of years. There's been different moments, obviously through Georgia's injury. She was leaning on me a lot for support during that time. And I found out how to be that support system for her through that. And then through my time kind of with the men's team and everything that was going on there, I was leaning on her more for that. So I think for sure, like we've leaned on each other a lot in the past few years and learned how to like what we need in those moments. And I think for us, the biggest thing is like, and especially I can say for myself, like what really helps me is like speaking out and being real and authentic about what I'm going through and feeling. And I've noticed how many people not necessarily connect to my whole story, but connect to different parts of my story. And I think that the amount of people that have reached out and said, when you said this specifically, I really connected to that. Or when you said that specifically, that really resonated with me. And I think the more that we can speak out and be open about what we're going through, the more that it will like erase the stigma around it, and that it will not be seen as such a, like the stigma will be taken away kind of with it. And I think that's something that's become really important to me is speaking out. And obviously, you know, we have a platform and a voice, and I want to use that to create positive change in the world.
Mm-hmm. Have you found something similar situation as well, Georgia, with you?
Yeah, I think when I was injured, I put up and through my rehab, which took about a year. I put up some videos and shared some of my times with, you know, just like my followers and whatnot. And many athletes reached out during and even still when they were going through injuries. And I think just connecting and realizing at how much of an impact you have and how much of how large of a platform you have to connect with certain individuals, whether it's someone that, you know, just sprained their ankle or, you know, an elite athlete that has gone through a similar knee problem, for example, you such a platform to reach out to connect to and really resonate with so many different people from different walks of lives and lives. And I think that's like the most important is connect with your tribe, like connect with your community, whether like whatever that is and whatever that looks like and whatever community you were a part of, that will make you happy. I think at the end of the day.
I was just going to add to that, Georgia. I think what you're saying is so powerful, especially for this time, and Steph, and the way that, you know, we have impact on our own little tribe. You said it perfectly. And say, for example, you're also maybe Sinclair, who also has more of a quieter social platform, but there are some people who are introverted and don't want to speak about it. And then others will relate to her and find strength in her leadership by example, which is through her play. And, you know, the fact that you guys are doing this and putting yourselves on the line, putting yourself out there, it's a vulnerable thing, right? It's not easy for everybody to do. So, you know, not only thank you for that, but there are people who your voice is important. And if you continue to share, you will connect our community even more in a time like this. It's a tough time for everyone. So even more now, I would say. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the chance to speak to a lot of psychologists this week just about how we're dealing in times of strife, which we're certainly dealing with today. And I think one of the big questions is how we're going to be as a society when we come out on the other side. How do we stay mentally healthy during this period so that when things go back to normal again, we're not completely affected? And I think that the things that you guys are doing, not only by speaking out and being as connected as possible in a world where we really can't be connected right now, but also creating routines and mentally checking in with yourselves by doing mindfulness and stuff. That is really important. Do you guys have any other coping mechanisms that you found in the last few weeks that might help other people who maybe are dealing with some kind of anxiety for the first time?
We are limiting our TV time to like an hour minimum of news in the morning. So
yeah, that's smart.
Maximum, not minimum. So that's like just one thing that I think we're doing. We're getting outside every day.
Yeah.
And I think the meditation is quite key for both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So far.
I would say too, like with this time, obviously, like not everyone is home, but for the people who are now working from home or spending more time at home than they regularly would, I think it's important to like find that routine and find what's working for you. And I think like figure out what is really important to you in terms of like values and what adds to your life versus takes away from it. And I think knowing, like, obviously if we go back to like normal where we're going back to work and we don't have as much time at home, it's going to be hard to maintain the same routine because there is going to be different, there's going to be travel time, there's going to be meetings, there's going to be whatever that's going to take us out of the house more often. But it's finding what are those few things that you really need on a daily basis and keeping that in your schedule when we start to go back to whatever the new normal is. And yeah, so I think it right now is like a really good, almost like training ground it's
like a learning opportunity.
Yeah, to like try different things. And there's so many resources out there. Like it's incredible how many companies are stepping out and like putting on, you know, live workout classes or live meditations, live yogas, like live seminars. Like there's so many things going on right now that I think it's a really exciting opportunity for people to kind of test them out and see what works for them and see what's really like adding joy to their lives and what they can continue to keep in moving forward.
This has been so great. I can't believe we actually have less than 10 minutes to go. This hour has flown by, but I do have one more question. I'm going to start off with you, Georgia, and Stephanie, I need you to think about your answer. So first, Georgia, I guess.
She's how she has all the time.
Yeah, multiple sports. I mean, how is it that you came to choose to, I mean, alpine, ski cross, cycling, and then Steph, if you had to choose another sport that you think you can compete at the Olympics, what would it be? But Georgia, I want to start with you because as I said off the top of this 1 hour, you're the first Canadian to compete in 3 different Olympics in 3 different sports. So why the multi-sports?
Cheers to that.
Ah,
Yeah.
Cheers. I'll crack a beer shortly. Well, first off, I think like to set the I played many sports as a kid. I name a sport, I played it, and I absolutely loved it. Like to name a few, like basketball, field hockey, soccer, softball, ski racing, of course. A little shout out. I was actually like a little Whitecaps junior kiddo there. Like we went down to like Seattle and stuff. I loved it. We traveled. We traveled. Loved it. And I think like I wasn't, playing soccer or ski racing 5 days a week at the age of 9 and 10. First and foremost, that like I need to say that because how many parents think their little child is the next Sidney Crosby? I hate to break it to you, but they're probably not. And they probably will be, burnt out by the age of 14. So I really think having that platform of playing as many sports as I wanted to as a child was given to me as an opportunity. And I, of course, thank my parents for that and thank them for their support, of course, as I developed. Of course, at the age of around 15, I had to make some tough decisions and I chose ski racing again instead of soccer and pursued that career. I worked my way up, of course, to the national team, and then, of course, was in Vancouver 2010 as a little youngster, very much head over heels and just blown away. That's a whole nother chat. And after those games, to keep it short, I just saw another opportunity in ski cross. And of course, they're both ski racing, but I had to really learn a lot in terms of ski cross and the jumps and the all the different components that are involved in that sport. Funny enough, it was actually watching the Women's World Cup in 2015 in Vancouver.
Oh,
I think is that correct?
Yeah, that was the Women's World Cup. Yeah.
That I had this idea that I wanted to become a Summer Olympian, and I just said, why not? Like why can't I do it? So I trained very hard as a ski racer in the off season, and definitely had like more of a cardio like base than needed and then required. And so I started actually rowing. So I got on a rowboat at the Burnaby Rowing Club. Well, it's truth, guys. These are facts.
Zigzag, crazy.
Yes. And long story short, I have a ton of respect for that sport. It is ridiculously hard. It is as hard as cycling in terms of like the sheer like lactic acid buildup and like that pain, but your whole body. The amount of times that I fell into the Pacific Ocean to count. And they were interested in developing my career, but they wanted me 365 days of the year. So I said, thank you, but no thank you. That fire was like still burning in me. So I literally I made it happen. It's not, you want to make something happen, like figure out how to do it and go get it. I emailed info@Cycling Canada. That's literally what I did. I think like my stars were aligned because someone responds and I knew who this person was. And I started my cycling career and did 2 camps with track cycling. And to keep it short, I I transitioned to the national team, let's say in a very quick, in a very short manner. But I didn't go through any loopholes. Like I did, my path excelled as any athletes would. It just excelled in a very short time frame. I think truly because I had such strong legs from ski racing, and I had a mature mind. I knew what hard work was all about, and I knew that I was stepping into something extremely foreign. And went to Rio and we won bronze, which was pretty cool. So we're here now.
Yeah, listen, I'm not blowing smoke up your you-know-what because I cover the Olympics. I've seen you compete. I mean, you are legit, and there's no jumping through loopholes. You've earned everything that you've gotten. So congratulations on that. But Steph, I felt like I heard her say soccer a lot of times, kind of like to say that if she took up that sport, she might be better. So I don't know.
We just talked the other day about it, and we were talking. She said, "Yeah, like I know how hard like shots come at you," and I'm like, "Do you know? Like I don't know if you played at this level." And she's like, "Yeah, but like I played Whitecaps." I'm like, "I don't know if it's the same."
Okay, so what would be your sport if you were to go to the Olympics in another sport? What would it be?
I have like two answers. My first one is I played 2 years ago when I like took some time off or 2 years ago. Oh my gosh, it was like 8 years ago when I took the beer.
Quarantine's tough,
huh? In 2012, when I took a year away from the national team, I spent some time playing handball. So I really, really enjoyed handball. So I could say like not as a goalie, yes, as a forward. Like I really wanted to score. So possibly handball. But I also spent some time 2 years ago. I spent an entire off season training with the Canadian heptathlon team. So part of me also is like, maybe I could do the heptathlon.
I think you should do that.
Probably like, okay, get up, like, sure. But yeah, one of those two maybe. I think I'm along with Georgia, like multi-sport all the way. I'm a big fan of like in the off season and whenever possible, like do other sports. I've always thought of myself as a professional athlete, not a professional soccer player. So I think it's like, especially in a sport that is so like demanding in terms of adaptability and athleticism and like it's not a linear sport. I think being an all-around athlete just makes you, and maybe that's why I peaked later in my career, who knows, but I think it's super important to be a multi-sport athlete and to challenge your bodies in so many different ways. So I've tried some other sports in my off seasons, but handball or heptathlon is my short answer.
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now in Rio, the IBC Center where we're like our studio, the handball arena was right next to us. There was a lineup to get into that. Like Europeans love their handball.
Yeah, very cool sport.
Yeah, amazing games here.
I mean, we lived in Sweden and they like the Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries, they love it there. It's so awesome.
Yeah. And it's not like whenever I pictured handball in the beginning, not anymore, obviously. I was like, like up against the wall in recess.
Yeah.
No, that's not the sport. But listen, ladies, it was an absolute blast having the two of you on. Georgia Simmerling, Stephanie Labbe. If you tuned in halfway through or you just tuned in now, don't worry. One Soccer Happy Hour, we're going to upload it on the One Soccer YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to that. We also have some other great shows. The Hangout, where the guys catch up with other former Team Canada members, current Canadian Premier League players. Gareth Wheeler also does a show once a week. He had John Herdman on, head coach of the men's team last night. So some great athletes sharing some great stories. Georgia, Stephanie, thank you so much. And say hi to Rio for us.
Did you finish my beer?
Yep, I did.
Well, cheers.
Cheers, you guys. Thank you so much. That was so much fun.
Thank you.